Hey everybody, I figured I'd do a video that was a few more minutes than 2 minutes. It's really hard to share information in 2 minutes and give a little backstory as to why you know, how I've come into contact with the information that I have. So about 13 years ago, what I've come to call a paradigm shift happened in my life. So a paradigm is just a multitude of habits. And so I had a bunch of habits that I had become that I thought was who I was. And 13 years ago, 14 years ago, it all shifted and changed to a completely different thing. And, I feel like I became somebody different, but at the same time, those things that I do and participate in, or even love and are passionate about, are not actually who I am. And that's what I came to understand through the paradigm shift. Um, I was a heavy drinker, and when I had my first child, my life turned around. I quit drinking, and I started busying myself with other stuff, and it was a complete shift, and led me to a lot of questions. And I wanted to understand things better, and I wanted to have a better perspective on what exactly had happened to me, because I'd seen lots of people struggle with substances and depression and anxiety and all of that. So I wanted to know what had happened to me, and I didn't think I was special, but I thought I had come into some kind of formula or something that was unique and significant, and I wanted to share it with others. So I began studying, and at that time I devoted my life to being the best Christian that I could. That was what I had decided on at that point. Um, Kind of foreshadowing that I have some different beliefs today. Um, but nevertheless, I started studying and trying to become more every day and understand more, and um, just have a better perspective and a better awareness of who I was and how I fit in the whole scheme of things. Uh, so that's I began that journey then. But as I started doing that, I started studying what I'd come to understand universal laws, um, or infinite truths, and principles. And when I ran into that stuff, like the law of attraction and the law of opposition and the law of compensation and these laws, and started reading about them, essays, and trying to understand them, I ran into some truths in there that I had understood before I knew what I was doing. So I was a touring musician and songwriter uh, for many, many years. And I had developed my intuition to a great degree and didn't know what it was. Like, I just called it reading the crowd. Um, I did not know what an empath was at that time. Uh, I didn't, I'm learning about it now, but it's funny to look back and see where those principles, I could find them to be true in my past. Um, and some of it was hard to accept, like, you become what you think about. And well, my life was miserable. And I was like, well, you're the writer, kind of like, well, it was bad because you made it bad. But it wasn't all misery. I really enjoyed playing music. I did develop a problem with drinking there towards the end, for sure. Um, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. And then when I got sober, when the paradigm shift happened, I went back to music and enjoyed it even more, with more heart in it. Um, and I have loved music because no matter how much you learn about it, you can never get to the end. And it's expanding and growing right now. Like, right while we're talking, music's getting bigger and expanding and growing. And then bumping into the awareness that everything in the universe is vibration and energy, frequency. That's music. And so I felt like I had been participating in the ineffable for quite some time, but didn't know what I was doing necessarily. There were some other thought seeding and stuff like that that I definitely ran into, um, and enjoyed trying to go back and dig into that and look at that. Then I began to process new information every day or every week or every month, and I would take a book that I thought was extremely valid, and I would listen to it over and over again while I worked for months. It usually only take about a month, and then I'd have the book memorized. And just because my particular ADHD, that's the best way for me to process information. Is my surface level body is doing something that I know how to do out of habit, but information is going in both ears. Um, so I just started processing new information that I found to be valid. And I would do my homework. I wouldn't just go and listen to something and be like, this guy's fantastic. Have you heard about this new guy, Joel Osteen or whatever? But um, that's not great character to take a shot at old Joel, whatever. I think he's a fictional character anyway. Philosophy. So I started studying philosophy after trying to get a basic understanding of the laws of the universe, or um, these principles that are valid and true no matter what. And they're wonderful. If you ever, they call them the lost laws. They're often associated with the strangest secret, which is we become what we think about, which is pretty obvious when you really look at it. So I started studying all kinds of philosophy then, not accepting all of it as truth, of course, at the first glance at it, but enjoying it and understanding it and listening to these different perspectives. And at that same time, I had to cut all major media out of my life. So I wouldn't watch the news. I'm not listening to radio. I'm not watching a cable show. I'm not doing any of that. The only things intentional that intentional information that I want to put in. I really fought it at first because it felt boring, but it really wasn't boring. It was, but it was just that I'd been so used to entertain me that when I tried to sit and focus on some extremely valid information, that my surface mind was like, I'm bored. I don't care. This is extremely valuable. So I'd drink coffee and stay up and try to focus on it. So the philosophy opened up all kinds of other understandings and perspectives on everything. And then I developed all kinds of different questions there, which eventually led me to the quantum physics versus Newtonian physics. And quantum physics is phenomenal. If you are an empath or a clairvoyant, or if you feel, like you have some unique energy signature in your, you should study quantum physics. Well, everybody should, but I think that just even the term quantum physics to your average Joe is going to maybe be intimidating. I don't know. But I really enjoyed it and found it, to be present in all sorts of different stages of life, everywhere you look, really. But the Newtonian physics is more about like the predictable, something falls, how fast does it fall, it falls to the, quantum is about the unpredictable, how like one time when an apple falls from a tree limb, it's going to go up, a tornado, or I don't know, but or something could pull the branch down and the apple falls up. Anyway, that's a very mild, ridiculous example of but it is more about the unpredictable, the things that we don't quite understand. And yeah, and I love superposition because it helped me understand being an empath more. Um, Superposition is when two things are embodied in one thing. And I mean, the easiest example is a coin. It's heads and tails. And if I flick it on a table and it's spinning, it's heads and it's tails, but it's neither heads nor tails. It's all of them all at once until you get to decide. Now is when I want to decide what this is going to be, and you get to. And it's kind of like as an empath, you can see the superposition of someone's negative energy, and you can say, I'm not going to get in that with you. Anyway, that's one example. Look into quantum physics. It'll be enlightening. Yeah. So then, and I topped all of that off because at that time I was working at a church, and I was really questioning some of the material that was being presented there. And so I began to study the origins of religious beliefs and each religion and the books that they were based on and that they honored. And guys, when I say studied, I know that's such a loose term. I went and found archived Ivy League seminars that they make available to the public after a certain amount of years on the subjects. Harvard and Yale were fantastic about information about who wrote what in the Bible, when, why was it changed, why was it edited. They have all that stuff up there. It's just available if you can drink coffee and sit through it and pay attention. So that's what I did. I was just choosing to use my time wisely and try to make it valuable. And on a quest, I wanted truth. You know, at some point in my life, I set out to disprove all of the things I had been told about, religion and spirituality. I set out to disprove it all, which is good and healthy. If I tell you something and you can't investigate it at all without finding out it's BS, then what do you got? You got a hot lie, hot garbage, So, the curiosity to try to look into things and not just take things at face value because someone you trust or whatever. So, so Yale and Harvard were pretty accredited spots. There were others. The point being that very valid information is out there, and you can find it, and you can cross-check it with other extremely valid sources. So don't just go shooting out, educating yourself on reels, doom scrolling. Go really seek out something. And then when something speaks to you or hits you, a 20-minute video about something, pretty please, if you're ADHD, if you're an empath, if you're not even, do listen to it over and over again 3 or 4 times a day for an entire week, and it'll get in another spot where it's accessible to you at all times. Or you might wake up thinking it one morning when it's not playing. Anyway, I'm a musician. I learn by repetition. It's helped me a lot. Well, all right. So that's an introductory. So again, I'm so grateful that everybody's watching. I really hope some of it's being helpful. If nothing else, just sparking new ideas to look and new ways to look at coexisting in a world with toxicity, and trying to be a pure element, or at least non-resistant or compatible, or it may be time to gather and balance scales. I don't know, but it is sort of a spiritual awakening that's going on, and I want to participate in it. So here's my small drop in the bucket.